As I mentioned at the top of the show, it is Earth Day today, and I do want to bring in our markets guest, Peter Kroll, partner and director of sustainable investments at Earth Equity Advisors. Peter, thank you so much for joining. I know you got some preferred environmentally sustainable stocks that we'll talk about too. But let's start at least now, big picture in terms of what you make of this market, your take.
Well, good morning, Kristen, and happy Earth Day to you. Thank you for having me on. And so, it's interesting. We've really paid close attention because we've been doing sustainable investing now for 20 years to how the markets have performed, especially, over the last couple of years. We've had some drivers such as the Inflation Reduction Act and other things that we would think would have driven clean energy, but unfortunately, pretty much since the end of 2020, 2021 sometime, we haven't seen clean energy or the clean economy perform as well as we would have liked. What I like to say to people is, of course, in theory, it's great to talk about buy low, sell high, but when things are low, it takes a little bit of motivation to actually dive into those companies that we think are going to be the clean energy leaders in the future.
Okay, let's start with one of those companies that I see on your radar here, Brookfield Renewable. What is attractive about that company to your firm?
Well, what I like about Brookfield is that they're a leader in clean energy development. They've got sort of the background or the backup, if you will, of Brookfield as a developer in general. But they're down about 40% off their 52-week high. They've got a great yield over 6.3%. And when you look at their revenues year over year, they're continuing to increase their revenues. And so, we look at them as an opportunity. One of the things that we talk about often is how we've transitioned over the years. I've been in this business over 20 years now, but how we've transitioned from investing long-term in businesses to really looking at short-term speculation. And when we look at the clean economy, when we look at the next economy, we want to invest in companies that are investing in building businesses for the long term, the companies that are going to bring us a cleaner, more resource-friendly, and more equitable economy.
So what is it about Brookfield that has it positioned in this space of clean energy? What does it provide that can be sustainable in this space over time?
Absolutely. So they're focused specifically on adding capacity, especially from solar, from wind. They've got a strong hydro component, but also batteries. Batteries have certainly been an area where a lot of folks who might be I don't want to say against clean energy, but bringing up issues that might be problems. Batteries are that factor that is going to help us to provide electricity, when the sun doesn't shine, when the wind isn't blowing, so that way it stabilizes the grid. And so they've been a leader in that. They've got over 8,000 megawatts of generating capacity. So they're continuing to grow, and we think that they're going to continue to grow into the future.
In terms of lithium, that's another space that we've seen these past few years get a lot of attraction. Are there names that you like in that field?
Absolutely. There's a number of names that we like. Right now, based on valuation, Albemarle is something certainly to take a look at. They're down 51% from their 52-week high. Again, we see a lot of opportunities in market leaders at this point. Their PE is only 9 at this point. And so if we're looking from a valuation perspective, it's almost, fallen into that value category. They're expecting to grow considerably, over the next 5 or so years. And, as we've continued to see EVs really start to move out, one of the things that I think is going to be a big driver of EVs is the adoption of you were talking about Tesla just a moment ago, but the adoption of the NACS or the Tesla standard for charging. It's going to make charging so much easier and so much more, available for people versus some of the other solutions that we've had in the past.
Despite the significant fiscal investments, as you alluded to earlier in the segment, that we've seen the Biden administration make in this energy efficient space, why do you think it is that some of these stocks have not been able to get the bounce that one would expect?
Honestly, I think we were overvalued coming out of 2020, coming out of the pandemic. We really saw a huge run up in prices in the clean economy. And so this is, in my mind, this is us coming back to a more reasonable level of growth. We also haven't seen the kind of growth that's necessary to really take us to net zero. In 2023, we saw about $1.8 trillion that was invested worldwide in the clean economy, and that's from Bloomberg NEF. But the reality is, for us to really hit net zero going into 2050, we need to be investing 3 times that. And so that's where we see the opportunity. Maybe that's where other people saw the opportunity when they run those prices up so much. But right now at this point, if you're going to look for market leaders, I think that you really have a good opportunity to bolster your portfolio long term.
What does higher for longer in terms of interest rates or borrowing costs mean for some of these companies that are more at the early stages of their growth?
It's certainly going to be an impediment to them. And, as a financial advisor, we're happy because we haven't seen interest rates this high for a long time. So we're helping clients to position, some bonds into their portfolio so we can, if you will, stabilize their portfolios with some nice yielding bonds. But for these companies that might need cash that are looking at, going to the market for bonds, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, and it's probably going to be an impediment to their growth.
And inflation alone, which we know is leading to higher borrowing costs, but how does inflation impact this space?
We haven't really seen any kind of inflation being an impact on the clean energy space. So that's one good thing. Clean energy prices are continuing to come down. At this point, they are pretty much on par, or at least very, very competitive with traditional energy sources.
I see Endphase Energy, another stock on your radar here. Peter, why is that one attractive to you?
Well, there's 2 companies in this space. There's SolarEdge and there's Endphase. And Endphase is just a better value at this point. They're both down considerably over their highs. But what's important and what's interesting about the technologies that they bring is, they bring microinverters and the ability to make solar panels a lot more efficient. What's nice about Endphase is they are working on bringing products to the market that aren't just microinverters, that aren't just traditional solar inverters. They're also looking at expanding different things into batteries, into charging stations, things that are going to expand their market share. In I guess you could say per home revenue across the board.
And I'm just curious in terms of what an upcoming election might mean for some of these stocks. Of course, we're still roughly, let's say, 6 months out or so.
Right.
But that is something that could impact, I think, the fiscal policy that we see coming out of D.C. And in turn, what would that mean for some of these names?
That's a great question. In fact, I did an interview about that last week as well. And so if we go back to the first Trump administration, clean energy actually skyrocketed. And when we look at the Biden administration, clean energy has completely underperformed. And so when I look at positioning a client's portfolio, and we position all of their portfolios from a sustainability perspective, we really aren't looking at what who is in the White House, because any observation that we might have made going into either one of these administrations would have been absolutely the opposite of what happened. And so we're really not looking at the political minefield, if you will, when we're putting portfolios together. We're building portfolios for the long term, trying to find companies that are going to be market leaders going forward in the clean economy, and that should continue to provide growth long term, no matter who's in the White House.
All right, Peter Kroll, happy Earth Day to you. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Peter's partner and director of sustainable investments at Earth Equity Advisors.